Hello students, welcome to Computer Programming 12. I decided to run a portion of this course with live videos so that you got a bit of a sense of still being with me here in the classroom, so that I can draw some things on the board to convey some concepts to you, and I can also kind of grab some items from around my workspace to give you some examples and show some real life connections and metaphors to help you understand some of the core concepts. You also get to kind of see a little bit of my awkward thinking in the moment, some of my terrible handwriting in display, and maybe have an opportunity to just get a bit of a sense of normalcy in this distance learning way of doing things. And if you're a student in the future who's watching back, hopefully COVID's all over and done with, and you can just enjoy some content that you can watch at your leisure to learn more about these core concepts and ideas. So the first thing I want to cover in this very introductory video is what's going on in this Computer Programming 12 course that you're taking that's a little bit unusual or different than ways that maybe have been done in the school or maybe in your own self-directed learning before. Well, in Computer Programming 12, you're going to have two options for coding languages that you can follow. The first option, let me make sure I don't walk in front of my writing too much here, is going to be studying Java. And your second option is going to be studying Python. You have some resources that I created for you that we're going to have us go over comparing the languages, learning a bit about the cost-benefit analysis of each one, the compromises that you have to make if you want to write in Java versus in Python, and some of the industry related reasons that you might choose one language over the other. The core thing that I want to cover in these live video recordings is the overarching concepts that tie these languages together. Because the reality is that a huge amount of coding that you do, no matter what language you write in, is going to be conceptually the same. Some things are conceptually different, but really the core skill sets of coding are universal. It doesn't matter what language you write in. If you understand the concept, all that you have to do from there is understand the specifics of how Java or Python or some other language want you to write the code in order to actually be able to create something workable in it. And so with Java and Python in mind, you need to decide which language that you want to write code in throughout this course. If you're feeling brave, you could even swap one project in Java, the next project in Python, return to Java and kind of feel out which coding language you like better, and develop a little bit more of a widened palette for different types of coding strategies involved, and develop your own preferences for how you want to write code in the future. You could, if you really want to be a keener, create all projects in both languages. That would set you up exceptionally well for your future coding studies, but would of course be more than is expected. So keep that in mind. Not an expectation, but maybe something you want to challenge yourself with if you find you have extra time. So how are these lessons generally going to work? Well, at the core of each topic, in our first unit, that's review, there's going to be a whole bunch of topics all in a row that review the core concepts from grade 11. And in future units, there might only be a lesson or two on the new idea and then lots of time to work on projects. But any new concept that we cover, the way I plan on preparing this series for you is I'm going to be creating a concept video. I'll get out of the way in a sec. A concept video that ties the whole concept together in one central way. These will be videos like this with me writing on the board and showing examples from the classroom. And from there, after you watch the video, you are going to click on a link to follow the more specific tutorials for whatever language that you're using for that project. So let's say our first lesson is going to be a little bit about just how we think about the Java or Python in general, and what counts as code and what doesn't count as code. And there's some different rules for that in Java and in Python. And so I'm going to talk a bit about in a concept video, specifically the big idea of what counts and doesn't count as code, but then you're going to learn specifically how to implement that in Java or in Python. Then later on, you're going to learn about variables. I'll have a video on the concept of what is a variable, how do we make sense of it conceptually, and then you can follow the pathway to either learn how to create variables in Java or variables in Python. And later on in the course, we'll get to much more sophisticated things. For example, there'll be a unit on creating a digital storefront. And in that one, I'm going to create a short video on just the overall concept of mapping out the logic of a storefront. We call it a markup language diagram, where we're going to kind of represent all of the interconnectivity of ideas that a storefront needs to operate, that any language would benefit from. But then I'll create some tutorials on specifically how we make the storefront work in Java versus how we make it work in Python. So, get ready. In the next video, we're going to dive into our first concept, and then you'll have your first optional branch to follow afterwards. Looking forward to teaching you. Hopefully you find these valuable. See you in the next video.